what it was really like in a Viking fishing village, and more good evening, or good morning, depending on where you find yourself. But wherever you are, this is a quiet space, a place of soft stories and ancient echoes. Tonight, we are traveling far north, to a world where the land is salted with sea spray, where the days are short, and the wind is a constant companion. This is not the world of Viking longships on conquest. Not tonight. This is not the clash of axes, or the roar of battle. No, tonight, we drift into something quieter, colder, more ordinary, and perhaps more revealing. We will spend time not with kings or raiders, but with those who lived beside the gray waves, who salted herring by torchlight, who listened to gulls scream overhead, who endured the ache of frost in their bones and the weight of myth in their hearts. Together, we'll explore what it truly meant to be Norse, not as a warrior, but as a person simply trying to live on the edge of a restless sea. So if you're ready, tuck in, let your breathing slow, and imagine yourself stepping softly into a Viking longhouse as the wind howls outside. The world is waiting. Imagine yourself waking in the gray hush before dawn. The air is cold, not the sharp cold of ice, but the damp, clinging chill of seawater soaked into timber and earth. You are in a longhouse shared with your family, and perhaps another one or two beyond that. It is dark, save for a few dying embers in the central hearth, a low glow that casts the rough wooden beams in shifting shadows. The smell is familiar: smoke, wool, salted fish, and the must of earth-packed floors. Your bedding is simple fur over straw, and as you sit up, you can hear the breathing of others. Slow, heavy with sleep, the rhythm of their lives, so close to yours. You pull a tunic over your shoulders wool, perhaps damp at the cuffs, and step toward the fire, prodding it gently with a stick. It takes patience, but soon there is a spark, a flicker, a small flame that brings light and the faintest warmth. Breakfast is not much a crust of barley bread, maybe a smear of butter if you're lucky, or a sliver of smoked herring from the rack above the hearth. Outside, the wind waits. You step into the morning, and it greets you with a sharp gust that cuts through your sleeves and rattles the thatch of the roof. The ground is uneven mud hardened by frost, and your boots crunch softly as you make your way toward the shore. The village is small. A handful of longhouses, a few low sheds for storage, and boats pulled onto the rocky beach. The sea stretches out in front of you, endless, gray, and moving with a quiet strength. Your day is already shaped for you. There are nets to check, lines to untangle, fish to gut and salt before the sun is too high. You join others by the boat, a narrow craft carved from a single pine trunk. Together, you pull the nets, your fingers numbed by water, your back aching from repetition. The catch is modest: some cod, a few herring, and a crab or two tangled in the line. Back in the village, you squat by a wooden bench and begin to clean the fish. Your knife is bone-handled, the blade dark with age. You work slowly, methodically, splitting bellies, scooping innards, rinsing scales with icy water from a bucket. The smell is thick salt, fish oil, blood, but to you, it is just the scent of life. Overhead, gulls circle and cry. Children chase one another through the mud, their laughter carrying faintly in the wind. An old woman stirs a pot over her fire. Somewhere, someone sings softly an old fishing song, repetitive and low, carried on the breeze. By mid-afternoon, your hands are raw, your shoulders sore. The sun barely rises this time of year, and already the shadows are growing long again. You take the salted fish to the shed, stacking them carefully on shelves. Tomorrow, you'll smoke some of them, hang others to dry. Each preserved piece is another day your family will eat. As evening falls, you gather by the hearth once more. The longhouse is warmer now, filled with the hum of conversation, the clatter of wooden bowls, the crackle of fire. You eat simply stew made from root vegetables, a slice of flatbread, and maybe, if it's a good night, a sip of mead or ale brewed from honey or grain. The stories begin, as they always do, tales of sea serpents, of gods and giants, of distant lands where the sun never sets. You listen, eyes heavy, head resting against the timber wall. Outside, the sea continues its eternal breath in and out, in and out. And you, in your longhouse by the shore, feel the rhythm of your people. A constant struggle, a quiet strength, a life shaped by the tides. Let your eyes close now, if they haven't already, and drift gently into the next chapter of our journey. The fire burns low in the longhouse now. Its light flickers softly against the walls, and the room hums with quiet breath and slow blinks. As your body rests, your mind is invited to travel away from the sea-slick nets and salted fish to the deep interior of one Viking man. A man who seemed forged from iron and grief. His name was Egil Skallagrimsson. Imagine him a large figure, broad-shouldered and brooding, his beard unkempt, his eyes small and deep-set, always searching. The son of a powerful family, and from childhood not quite like the others. Even as a boy, Egil was difficult, his temper unpredictable, his silence ominous. By the time he was 7, he had already killed a boy in a brawl. By 12, he was composing verse with startling clarity. He belonged to the 10th century, a world where words could be sharper than blades, and where a man's saga might stretch longer than his life. Egil's family settled in Iceland, fleeing political tension in Norway. They were strong, respected, and occasionally feared. And Egil, well, Egil was all three. He fought, yes, but he also wrote. A paradox wrapped in wool and war paint. A man who could cleave a skull in battle, and that same night sit by the fire and compose a poem about the stars and the fragility of fate. His verses survive, woven into the Egil's saga, recorded by skalds and scribes long after his death. One of the most famous moments in his life came not on the battlefield, but in the quiet, lonely ache of mourning. His son had died, a boy named Babvar, swept into the sea, taken by waves that cared little for lineage or love. Egil was broken, and in his grief, he did not rage. He did not curse the gods aloud. Instead, he picked up a quill and wrote a poem, a sonatoric, the poem of loss. It is one of the earliest known laments in the Norse tradition. In it, he does not hide from his sorrow. He walks straight into it. Fierce grief robbed me of rest. Not from cowardice do I grieve. I will not take to my bed with womanish tears, though I weep within. Can you hear it? The thunder of restraint, the storm behind the lines. He grieved like a warrior, with words as his only sword, but Egil was not a hero to all. His temper, his stubborn pride, and his sharp tongue made him dangerous. He killed over slights, over insults, over politics. He once carved a ninstang, a pole of insult, and set it on a hill to curse a queen who had scorned him. It was carved with runes, and topped with a horse's head, an act of magical defiance. Later, he would find himself shipwrecked in enemy territory, captured and brought before a king who wanted him dead. But Egil did not beg, he composed. Right there, in the hall of his enemy, he recited a poem so powerful, so skilled, that the king spared his life. Imagine that. Your life saved not by your sword, but by the way your voice wrapped itself around syllables. That was the heart of the Viking skald, the warrior poet. The belief that words could wound, words could honor, words could survive beyond bone and blood. Egil did survive. He lived into old age, long after most of his friends had gone. His bones ached, his vision faded, but still he composed. Toward the end, he buried his silver, hid it in the earth, and told no one where it was. Perhaps he feared theft. Perhaps he no longer cared. Perhaps, like his poetry, he hoped it would someday be found again. A quiet gift from a man who had always carried storms beneath his skin. As you lie here now, listening to the wind of 1,000 years past, remember him, Egil, who could split a man's skull with an axe, and split your heart with a verse. Now close your eyes a little more deeply as we move from one kind of magic to another. We are leaving Egil's stormy soul behind and stepping into the silent world of runes, of stone, of ancient whispers carved in time. Outside the longhouse, the wind softens. The sea hushes, as though the tide itself were listening. And you drift now into another layer of Norse life. Not the harsh tang of fish, nor the thunder of oars, but the cold, deliberate scratch of chisel against stone, the whisper of runes being born. Imagine yourself walking through a quiet clearing. It is morning, and dew clings to the grass like memory. Before you rises a tall stone slab, not polished or grand, but still unmistakably sacred. Its face is etched with curling lines, interlocking marks, and coiled serpents of inscription. This is a runestone, a message in the earth, a voice from the past, silent but never lost. Runestones were erected throughout the Norse world, across Sweden, Denmark, and parts of Norway, even reaching into what is now Britain and beyond. They served many purposes: memorials, territorial markers, testaments of power, and in some cases, spells. Their language was Old Norse, but their alphabet? That was something older still. Runes, the futhark. Each rune carried a sound, yes, but also an idea, an image, a force. Fehu, the rune for wealth, looked like a bent branch. Alges, protection, like antlers reaching to the sky. Tiwaz, for honor and sacrifice, was a simple spear pointing heavenward. To carve runes was not just to write, it was to invoke, to shape the unseen. Imagine a carver now, kneeling by stone, his fingers stiff from cold, but his touch precise. He chisels slowly, each groove deliberate. This was not a hasty art. It could take days, even weeks, to complete a single stone. Often he would begin with a dedication. Thorstein raised this stone in memory of his brother, a brave man who died in the East. Then perhaps a curse, to guard the memory. Let him who defaces this stone know no rest, and be cast out by the gods. These curses were not flowery threats. They were deadly serious. To erase a man's memory was to kill him a second time. The stone was his afterlife, his anchor in this world. To destroy it was a kind of murder. But not all runes were on monuments. Some were carved into bones, wooden staves, or even the halves of tools. A fisherman might carve laguz, the water rune, into his boat, asking for calm seas. A young lover might send a message on birch bark, runes bent to romance, to longing. And then there were Galdrastaffer magical runic staves, symbols woven from runes, to bind fate, call fortune, or ward away spirits. In one Icelandic text, a man carves runes into a piece of driftwood and throws it into the sea, hoping it will draw a whale to shore. In another, a warrior writes runes on his blade, not to make it sharper, but to make it sing truer in battle. Runes lived everywhere in Viking life. They were carved into combs, cradles, swords, spoons. But they were not understood by all. Rune lore was the gift of Odin, who, according to the myths, hung himself from Yggdrasil the world tree, for 9 nights and 9 days, pierced by his own spear, offering himself to himself. Only then did the runes reveal themselves to him. They were born from sacrifice, and they demanded reverence. So when you see a runestone, half sunk in moss, half lost in snow, know this: it is more than just a name and a date. It is a soul preserved in stone, a voice, still speaking, if only you know how to listen. In some fields in Sweden, There are runnerstones with winding dragons, twisting like serpents around the letters. Some of them still mention voyages to the east, to what the Vikings called Miklagard, the great city, now Istanbul. Others speak of love, of loss, of loyalty. There is one that reads simply, "He died in the west, far from home. May God and Thor guide him." Notice the contradiction. God and Thor. Christianity was seeping in, but the runes, they remained. As you lie here, perhaps you can feel their presence. Those old letters, those sharp, comforting lines, they are not loud. They do not shout. They wait, like twilight, like memory. You have now walked through the world of stone in silence, and as we turn once more toward firelight, toward fir and oath, and the hush of a noble hall, prepare yourself gently for the final vision. A night in the Jarl's longhouse, where status glimmers and power brews like mead. Night has settled over the coast. The wind now carries a deeper chill, and the sea, ever present, hums a low, distant lullaby. But tonight, your path leads not to a bed of straw in a creaking longhouse. No, tonight you step through heavier doors, through the carved entrance of the Jarl's Hall. The longhouse of a Jarl, a regional chieftain, a local lord, was not just a home. It was a theater of power, a gathering place, a feast for the senses and a forge of alliances. Step inside now. Feel the warmth roll over your skin, a welcome contrast to the frost beyond. Your boots sink slightly into thick rushes scattered across the floor, meant to absorb spills and soften footsteps. The roof arches high above, beamed like the ribs of a great ship. Smoke drifts lazily upward toward the hole at the top, tracing the same path it has for generations. Torches line the walls, casting flickering light over shields, spears, and the gleam of polished drinking horns. But it is the hearth, the great central fire, that commands the room. It crackles steadily, its light catching on the silver trim of cloaks, the golden threads woven into a Jarl's tunic, and the furred edges of cloaks pulled close against the cold. Men sit along long wooden benches, laughing softly, speaking in low tones. Their hands curl around cups of warm mead, honeyed and heavy, sweet with a quiet bite. There is music here, but it is subdued. Perhaps a skald with a lyre, fingers gently plucking a slow minor tune, or a singer murmuring the deeds of ancestors, not in shout or chant, but in the half-sung whisper of remembrance. The Jarl sits at the high seat, beneath the carved head of an elk. He is not a king, but in this hall his word weighs like iron. His cloak is heavy with embroidery, and a brooch at his shoulder catches the light like a northern star. His beard is neatly bound in rings, his gaze distant, calculating. Around him, men and women mingle, not as strangers, but as players in a slow-moving game. There are merchants, bearing fine wool and Baltic amber. There are envoys from neighboring lands and younger warriors, watchful for slights and opportunity alike. Here, every toast is a negotiation, every nod a signal, every silence a statement. Imagine a toast being made, a horn raised not in joy, but in memory. To Bjorn the Steady, who held the fjord when others fled. May his name live long in our mouths. Voices rise in reply. Cups clink softly. Then, once more, the room settles into murmurs and movement. Behind the scenes, women oversee the feast. Not silent figures, but partners in power. Wives, daughters, sisters of noblemen, discussing alliances, weighing futures, arranging marriages not of the heart, but of land and loyalty. And still the fire burns. Always the fire. Food is served. Roasted meats, barley cakes, perhaps fish stew slow-cooked over hours. The smell is earthy, rich. It mingles with the scent of smoke, of pine resin, and wool warmed by firelight. A servant quietly refills your cup. No words, just a nod. Then the skald rises. His voice carries not loud, but clear. He speaks of old battles, of sea journeys to the land of the Russ, of kin who were lost but not forgotten. His tale is long, measured like a tide, and somewhere in it you feel the rhythm of this world. A world of oaths and obligations, of loyalty purchased not with coin, but with presence, with memory, with time spent beside a fire, under a roof that has seen a dozen winters and more. Outside, snow may be falling, but here, within these walls, is warmth, not only of hearth, but of community, of recognition, of order in a land of uncertainty. Occasionally, a voice rises too sharply. A young man, flushed with mead, boasts too loudly. The Jarl does not look up, not at first, but those nearby still their tongues. The weight of respect or fear settles in the room like ash. This is not a place for foolishness. Rivalries simmer, but they rarely boil. Not here, not under the Jarl's eye. In the shadows, old men sit in silence, their eyes dim but watchful. They have seen summers come and go, seen sons born and buried, seen gods worshipped and abandoned. They say little, but they listen to everything. And now, as the night deepens, as the mead slows its pour, and the hall grows quieter, you rise. You leave your cup, your place by the fire. You walk past the wooden pillars, carved with intertwined beasts and myth. You step out once more into the starlit dark. The air is colder now, sharper. But inside you, there is warmth. From the longhouse of the fisherman to the hall of the Jarl, from herring gut to oath-sworn memory, you have walked the Norse world. You have seen its daily rhythms, its inner storms, its carved mysteries, and its whispered power. And now, as the waves break gently on the distant shore, as the fire's glow lingers behind your closed eyes, you are ready to rest. Thank you for walking this path, for listening, for letting the past settle softly into your thoughts. Though the Norse world could be harsh and cold, its people carved warmth from stone, from story, from shared silence. Now, as you lie back, wrapped not in wool, but in the hush of night, remember, the world still turns. But in this moment, you need only drift. Let the stories fade into sleep. Let the sea sing you home. Good night.